Hi there. Is everybody good? That was an interesting conversation, right? It's a lot to learn. So this discussion for today, you will see why we have these panelists in this conversation. As an industry, we've talked about customer journey marketing forever. You admit? We have been, right? It's in literature since 2010. But are not a lot of specifics about what's really possible. And as signal loss is happening all over the place, you saw that last comment about cookies and no cookies and all of that. There is so much new innovation is happening in the platforms, the capabilities, and so forth. So we're going to have that discussion. This is actually a sequel. This is started out with a conversation with Jim Boris of TripAdvisor, who is the SVP of Growth at South by Southwest early this year. And we were talking about a bunch of things, and there were so many questions from the audience. As usual, you only have 25 or 30 minutes here, and so it's difficult to address all of that. I told them, hang on, we'll come back. So we've come back. This is part 2. And so with that, let's do the introductions. Jim, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Jim Mollica, Chief Marketing Officer from Bose. Great to be here, back in the building.
I just realized your voice is like a perfect voice for voiceover of anything.
I'm available, Dacey, side hustle.
Exactly, VP of Marketing at TripAdvisor. Super excited to be here.
And Seraj Bharwani, as I was introduced earlier, I represent illumin. Now, why would I be talking about customer journey marketing? It's selfish interest, frankly. We're plain and simple. That's what we do. That's what our platform does. That's what illumin does. And it's a lot more because it's about connecting not just the wider open web, the streaming, the digital out of home, the social, the you name it. All of those places you need to be able to connect with your audiences in some methodical, systematic way. That's what we do. That's it. That's all the commercial message I have for today. Now let's focus on the topic itself. So let's start with the platform side of the relationship. Matt, start us with the description of TripAdvisor. In particular, everybody cares about scale. So start with the size of the audience, and what do these people do on your platform?
Sure, very specific. TripAdvisor has hundreds of millions of travelers on our platform every single month. We've been around for 20 years. There's over 1 billion reviews, 330 million authentic pictures on the platform. So it's a massive scale in itself. What do travelers do on the platform? They try to make travel decisions. So they plan, they dream. When they have to make decisions, they decide. During the booking process, we tend to send them to partners. That's how we monetize. And then before travelers actually go to the place in which they've found, they spend extensive time researching, what to do, restaurants to go to, real authentic pictures of the restaurants themselves, experiences, to make sure that they maximize the impact or the time that they have when they're traveling, which is the most special time of any person's year. So the platform exists for travelers, but also, obviously, one of the reasons we're here is it also exists for partners, whether it's 8 million listings on our platform or media partners like yourselves that might invest against that audience.
Excellent. To be precise, if you don't mind, 400 million people monthly use TripAdvisor, okay, worldwide. So when we think about data, this is scale. And it is all consent. People give you that data. They want to share that, right?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Now when you watch that much behavior on a platform like this, clearly you're noticing trends. What is it that you see them doing? What is this they're telling you they're interested in?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of interesting new trends in travel. We didn't get into our backgrounds, but I joined TripAdvisor 4 years ago, which if you do the math, my timing was exquisite. It was 6 months before a pandemic, so revenue was down, I think, 80–90% during 6 months in. People were like, Matt, what levers can you drive to grow the business? And I was like, nothing. But trend one is travel is completely back, and it's not just back, it's back in a big way, and then international travel in particular is finally back. And that's staggered over the last year, but it's pretty exciting to see people are more likely to travel internationally now than they were in 2019. So I think a fantastic trend on that. The second big trend is experiences matter more than possessions. I'm sure you've seen that in the data and many of the things you're looking at, but it's sustaining post-pandemic. We had a stat that 70% of our travelers prefer experiences that they can remember over possessions themselves. And that actually over-indexes with younger customers. So I think it's a pretty interesting insight on that. And because of that, travel in particular is a non-negotiable discretionary spend for our customers. So 90% of our customers tell us that they will not negotiate on spend that they set aside for travel, which obviously has an implication on other non-discretionary spend, discretionary spend. And then I think the third interesting trend is that a lot of people are complaining, obviously right now, about over-tourism. People are complaining about the pain in the ass it is to travel. I think you just last night experienced it. But that is nothing. It's not changing travel behavior compared to cost. And I think cost in particular, the same trip this year versus last year in our data is up 35% in terms of the cost. And when you think of the non-negotiable piece of spend there, and then the fact that the cost is increased by 35%, puts pressure on how customers and travelers might rethink their spend in the quarters to come. We have not seen it in the data, and I think that's important to call out, but if we're looking at leading indicators of how things might start to change, that is one in particular that's having a pretty profound, likely, but potentially profound change in the next couple quarters.
Oh, exciting, right? Did you track all of that? This is really, really important developments, right? Getting it directly from your consumer, behaviorally, perspective-wise, all of that's very important, which means some fundamental changes are afoot. Jim, to you. The marketing moments and content have been some big themes, which is very experiential oriented. There's a consistent theme here under your leadership at Bose, right? Elaborate on that. Tell us what are some of those things that you're doing to really keep Bose top of mind for your audience?
Happy to, but before I do that, just want to circle back to a couple of things that Matt said. Number one, a shout out to TripAdvisor for the amount of meals that he saved me from going into poor restaurants internationally. Yelp in like 2 reviews when you're in Shanghai doesn't cut it, right? Unbelievable amount of customer feedback on those restaurants internationally, so it's massive, number one. Number two, agree about experiences. I think that's why I've shifted except around passion points, right? And creating experiences around passion point products, sneakers, music, right? There are certain things that people dedicate their lives to, and that changes everything. And then there's some interesting components when you take passion points and they converge, right? Travel, music, there's some really interesting opportunities. So back to your question about moments. Look, I think for a lot of you out there that are publishers, that are in ad tech, the contextual play is really important. And I think that people don't get it. You can have all the demographics in the world, but I have a youngest brother who's 18 years younger than me. Our media consumption behaviors look identical. If you ran any model, we would be targeted totally differently. And so there's a massive play about finding the right context at the right moment with the right type of content in that time to really maximize the impact of what you stand for as a brand. And that should be the ultimate goal. And that's the way we sort of map everything. It is through consumer journeys. It's not binary. This is a awareness moment mostly. This is a DR moment mostly. There are a bunch of touch points throughout that entire process where we are choreographing content to earn people's time and attention during those moments. And I think all of you can help play a part in that, make it better.
Excellent. So now I have a related question to that part of it. You mentioned something about context playing a very important role in keeping brand front and center. How does that carry further in terms of the ability to drive purchase decisions? So for example, do you see that at that moment in that context, both branding and commerce happening simultaneously or happening over time, which is in fact the journey that you mentioned?
Well, it can be both, right? There are times when people are in the market to buy a product, and they see your upper funnel TV campaign, and that reminds them of Bose, and now they're going to go and look at Bose and buy that product. I think there's the best opportunity that you have is if you can get it in the right context, you're basically making a much more impactful brand experience. It gives you the opportunity to reinforce the authority that you have and however your brand is positioned and what you own in their mind, right? Versus randomly showing up. I mean, God bless all of the social networks. We use them a ton. There's a bunch of things that are beneficial there. But if I can create content with Spin or NME, really credible music publications, Brooklyn Vegan, they go into niche. It becomes it becomes very clear that this company is run by music fans for music fans, and it creates a deeper brand impression. So for me, it just accelerates that.
Got it. Okay. So let's switch the conversation back to Matt. So you are going to see some method here to this madness in the way I'm going back and forth between Jim and Matt. Think of Jim as the brand, trying to create that moment in that experience, connect the brand with the consumer. Think of Matt as the platform where all these interactions are potentially happening, and therefore there might be some connective tissue there. So Matt, to you, which is, what are some of the things that are in fact happening there, behaviorally speaking, which can be beneficial to really drive the connection for whether it is an endemic brand or a non-endemic brand? And please define those in the context of the way you run your business.
Sure, and maybe I'll start with the definition. So we consider endemic things that are directly related to travel. Think of restaurants, hotels, experiences, even ride sharing might be considered endemic. And then non-endemic would be brands outside of the core travel. It could be beauty, it could be OTC, it could be, of course, brands like Bose that are related to travel, and in many cases improve the travel experience itself, but aren't directly in what we would consider our core set of endemic partners. And so within that, there's pretty significant opportunities. I thought you said it really well in terms of context. And I do think the context to travel is fascinating, because we often think about the destination you're going to go to, what you're going to do there, but the amount of spend that occurs around travel is massive. So we have stats like 90% of people that are traveling are considering buying clothes for that trip. So you have to buy clothes. As you get close to a trip, you have to think, especially if you're going internationally, think about your mobile carrier, whether you need insurance or not. You have to think about the long airplane and potentially a crying child next to you, and you might want those fresh noise cancellation headphones. So you need to have, as you think about actually planning and making decisions, it just happens across the context. And the travel journey is a unique one. From the time people start to when they book the primary thing they book, it's a 42-day journey. They go across 30 different sites just to do the initial planning. And then you have another 60 days leading to the trip that's going to actually occur. And so we have these moments throughout our website and throughout experiences and partnerships that we have where you can actually participate as a brand. And I'll just give one quick highlight, because I think it's a really cool one, which ties some of this together, which is L'Oreal and TripAdvisor have a 3-year partnership. It's quite a fascinating one. And they gleaned into some insights, which is frequent travelers buy twice as much beauty and OTC products as those are less frequent. And so on our platform, they can target those travelers. They created an on-the-go site. You can actually go from our site to the on-the-go, buy a number of products, and then have them available at the duty-free shop at the airport. So once you land, you can grab them and go to your destination. So that's the kind of connection that I think is pretty fascinating and creates opportunities, and it's all in context, which I think is a great point.
We got it. Thank you, Matt. So now let's move in that direction here to see exactly how that connection gets made, right? This idea and the thought of bringing these two gentlemen here, the leaders in their own marketing fields, here today for this conversation was precipitated by my own personal experience that happened on airports. And I was telling Jim about that. 20 years ago, I was on an airport and I saw this beautiful Bose booth with sound system and everything else where everybody could go experience it, listen to this stuff, and really know the difference between having or not having noise cancellation. I was convinced on the spot, and I dropped down $400 and bought it right there and then. Since then, you know,
$399, let's be clear.
yeah. That's the right
everything
price.
for us.
Yes. Few months ago, a similar thing happened, except there was no Bose booth or anything of that sort. I just went straight into a consumer electronics store at an airport, went to the headphone segment, pulled out the Bose box, went to the seller, the clerk who is over there to pay for it. And she said, "Sir, do you know that we also have cheaper alternatives?" And she's pointing me to a couple other brands over there. And I said, "No, I'm fine. I'll just get this one." And I paid for it. And then I said, "Okay, this is very interesting. You have a distribution channel clearly on the airports. You use it, and it works. I anticipate a 6-hour travel. I don't have headphones in my bag. I figured I'll get it. How does an environment like this allow you to build on an established distribution channel that you have, just like L'Oreal has, right? And to figure out new, innovative ways of doing things, right? Because remember, consumers, they do whatever they'll do, wherever they'll do it, right? You want to figure that out. The other part where I want you to go, Jim, is there has been literally no communication between Bose and me over the past 20 years. I'm an avid user of your product. How do you connect the dots here?
So there's a lot in that. Let me just try to take a step back real quickly and do the truncated version of this. That is an incredible use case. We call them listening occasions. These listening occasions, there are about 12 of them. We prioritize 7, but there are 12 variants of it. Sound is all we do. There are other companies out there that make competitive products, but they also make phones and laptops and washing machines. Like, this is all we do. It's a company full of obsessive music fans like me. I mean, if you could see my case on my phone right now, it's covered in like 80s punk rock cassettes, right? People like me. Now, a lot of people have different tastes in music in the company, but right, it's everyone working towards creating these incredible experiential moments within these listening occasions. One of them is travel. I know many people create playlists for trips or download a bunch of albums that they want to listen to on that trip. Like, it's an incredibly immersive moment potentially for you. It can be good or bad. That's why noise cancellation is so important, is it creates a clean canvas for you to listen to incredible music. It's really hard to get a clean canvas on an airplane. So for us, those opportunities where we have 2 different real messages to key on people that are leading up to travel, which is a big moment, or at the airport when they realize, oh my God, I forgot my headphones. One is noise cancellation, when they just want to block out the world, right? And it might not be a crying baby. It might just be, I don't want to talk to this person next to me, and so I'm going to put these headphones on and be clear. It's like, I want my own time. And the other person is just having the moment where they can actually spend slow time absorbing the music that they want to hear, because we don't do that much anymore. It's always with something and we're doing something else. It's a soundtrack while we're in another activity, which is incredible because it's kind of ubiquitous, but you don't have those moments anymore. So that is a very acute use case, which we attack both in that moment, in that context. Now, to your question about not communicating, one of the biggest challenges for brands like Bose and a lot of other luxury premium brands is that they're disintermediated by these resellers. God bless our partners, but at the end of the day, they are not going to create an experience that I feel is adequate or representative of what the passionate music fan would be. That's up to me, and I am doing everything in my power then to start to create a greater value exchange between me and the music fan, so they understand what additional things that they are getting. And it's not necessarily price or bundling or extended warranty. It may just be a connection to the new music and all of the young artists that we're sponsoring as brand ambassadors and they get access to. So when all of that, you overlay that, you create a better value exchange, you get more people into the D2C to have that communication. Or now, if you buy those headphones in those resellers, we've created an app that has different settings, that have algorithms in there based upon your musical preferences. And now we start to have data and that umbilical cord back to you, we can go back and forth. That becomes the key. It's a slower moving process than any of us would like.
Got
but
it,
that's
yes.
the goal.
Okay, so this completes the loop. That's what I wanted to show today. Why am I bringing this up and why am I highlighting this? Dozens of first-party environments are popping up all over our marketing landscape. They refer to themselves as retail media. What is this? What are these things? These are essentially first-party audience bundled media. That's fundamentally what it is. Retail, because Amazon started this whole movement, Walmart followed, Target followed, and then everybody else is doing it. But these environments are not necessarily just retail per se. As an example, we just showed you TripAdvisor, right? Okay, normally what happens in these forums, by the time we get over here, I say, do you have any questions? This time, I'll start with, I have questions for you.
Before you leave that, can I add one thing about retail media?
Please.
Networks?
Please.
Can I just say to anyone that is, and I consider you so much more contextual than retail media network, as somebody that potentially has the opportunity to spend a lot of money in these retail media networks, you have to start treating it as a core to your business. If it is an after the fact, cash grab, no accountability, reporting isn't on the same level as the other platforms, forget it. I'm taking all the money away. And it becomes, even if you're a very close partner, the battle back and forth, there is no more, I'm paying for a bunch of run a site or things you can't give me strong metrics back on. It doesn't have to be ROI, but it does have to be return on objective that we agree to. No money. So the reporting, the ad inventory, the kind of creative units, the impact, all needs to be accountable. And you're competing with people like Matt that are creating an incredible ecosystem that I'll just go and spend money in.
There you go, exactly. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Essentially, attribution, accountability is the key here, right? And there is a lot more to this whole experiential journey element to that, because the consumer will decide wherever they decide what they want to do and how they want to interact with your brand, right? And so this is one example. So my question to you is, can you think of other environments like that? Can anybody think here of another environment where you have actually had that interaction and you say, oh my God, that sounds amazing. It makes sense. Anyone? I'll give you an example from this morning. I was in the Uber. I got on there on 30th and 7th Avenue. The driver picks me up. I get in the car. I check my application inside to see how long it's going to take me to get to the Paramount building. Guess what pops up right there in the Uber app? Starbucks. Starbucks tells me that it will take me 10 minutes to get to the destination in Paramount. There is a Starbucks store right here. Order right now and the coffee will be ready for you. You can pick it up on your way. That's experience. It's context. They don't really know anything about me personally, the fact that I don't drink coffee.
But besides that, it's incredible.
But if you look at contextually, right, it's right on. It's about, somebody said it in the previous conversation, it is about helping the consumer accomplish what they want to accomplish. Help them solve. That's the fundamental job of marketing. find out where those disconnects are, where the friction points are, and solve that problem the way Jim's looking at it and the way Matt's looking at it to figure out how to serve that. So I used this as an example, point counterpoint combo, as a solution for you to think about that in your business, in the vertical or the category you are in, you have plenty of opportunities like that, as opposed to worrying about third party and first party and this, that, and everything else. Look for those ecosystems within which you plug in that allows you to cross all those barriers through the end-to-end journey, whether it is about keeping your brand top of mind, engaging them and educating them, or if essentially getting them to own it and use it. Anybody have any questions for the gentleman? Anybody over there? Yes, go.
Yeah, Matt, you threw out some stats about. Thank you. You threw out some stats about 42-day journey to book on average and 60 days till they take the trip once they book. Any feel for if that's changed dramatically one way or another over the last? I have to imagine it has in the last 3+ years.
So it hasn't tremendously. It's if anything, it's gotten a little bit longer because the planning process, especially on the after effect of COVID, required a bit more intention and thoughtfulness. I do think as the cost is increasing, that time to book is also starting to increase slightly. And then it's the back end, it's kind of hard to say, right? That's an average. If it's an international trip, at times it's 90 to 120 days out. If it's a trip, you know, your regular vacation, it might be 30 days out. So we're not seeing any significant trends on the back end of that, but I'd say that the length of time is expanding just a little bit. The intensity of search, I would say, is probably the bigger shift, which is the sheer volume of different places people are going to try to determine, you know, what their dream is and what their plan is, just because time is so much more important. And that's what our customers are telling us over and over. More research.
They're just being more thoughtful, I guess, about how they make these plans. Yes, go ahead.
You both talked about listening and communicating literally and figuratively in different ways, right, up here. How does that inform some of the innovations that you're doing? So beyond the example with the beauty company, but then also how are you able to leverage those passion points, those knowledges, in order to create something new for your consumers?
Short story of that is we will connect those passion points, sports, food, travel, fashion, with our brand in some way, shape, or form. Joe Burrow, NFL, Damian Lillard, NBA, Jack Grealish, EPL. I can't talk about some of the collabs we're doing with fashion coming up, but big, known, interesting music-based fashion brands, right? The athlete can't just be an athlete. They have to have. Dame is a hip-hop artist, right? Jack Grealish is a massive music fan with these super eclectic, really weird tastes for a young man, but really interesting guy. And so we use those as backdrops for these stories. So we're using those passion points, putting them together, and then to draw attention to it and use that as a platform. The other ways are like, I create a lot of content, not advertising. We have to have some advertising, but the majority of the stuff we create is content. And because of my time here, my time at Disney, learned a bit about development slates, and we create programming like Turn the Dial, which is focused on that only 3% of music is created by women producers. There's all these great women artists. There are no producers that get a shot. So we take these up-and-coming women producers, we connect them with incredible artists like Anne Marie or Little Sims, and then they get time to create a track together. And we go through that almost like storytelling as they create that in a co-collaboration way. And then we learn from it, right? Like, are people watching? Where's the drop-off point? So there are all those methods of earning people's time and attention that we're focused on coming out of the data.
Yeah, I think, go ahead.
I was just, it's somewhat redundant, so I'll say it very quickly, but it's very similar in nature. Engagement is extremely important on our platform. We score every traveler with a passion index. So it could be passion for hiking, passion for kayaking, passion for scuba diving, whatever it may be. And so a lot of what we're starting to work on is content around that. Interesting, engaging content, connecting travelers with other travelers. And of course, it's a great place for brands as well. But it's actual true engaging content and connections with a community that's tied to that. And that is a win for us, frankly, on more engagement on our platform, and a win for our travelers and then our partners.
I think these are all very interesting and entertaining ways of educating people, right, to know more about your brand. You've all heard of the whole study that was done 3 years ago. You know, Google funded this whole study, which was the messy middle. People remember that? It was you can do as much advertising as you want to keep your brand top of mind, but by the time they show up at the Bose, store or to your DTC site, they've already decided they want to do something with you. It's in the middle where they are exploring and evaluating is where you want to engage them and be top of mind to be helpful. And I think that problem is to be solved somehow, and advertising alone randomly does not necessarily solve that problem. And I think you all recognize it. You just need environments within which you can accomplish that, and that was the purpose of that discussion. You are a very generous audience. Thank you so much, and thank you, Jim and Matt.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.